finally they, Mrs. Wardick and her husband Bill bought it, and they added on, there were rooms in the back. There was a bedroom and a small living room and a kitchen and a bath, and then a little front porch off to one side. And so Mrs. Wardick lived there. Her mother lived, Mrs. Wingate, lived on Willow. There was a luxury.
Fanny Wingate.
Fanny Wingate. There was on Willow. There was the Luxford House, and then several lots in between, and then Fanny Wingate. She's the one that wrote the song.
Anna Maria song.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get to see our heritage pageant when the children sang that? We had a music in with the play, and the music director, Marge Ebel, who was the organist at Rosa, was Miss Kathleen.
Oh.
She dressed old-fashioned, and we had this, they call it Anna Maria Community Chorus, mostly small children, and they sang the Anna Maria song. And the principal of the school, Jim Cronus, said that he wanted copies of that because he wanted the children at the school to learn it. This was 2 years ago. So
We always sang it. Well, of
they
course,
knew.
it wasn't. She didn't write it when I was going to school. But later on, she didn't. Of course, anything that happened in the community, anything the school did, even after I was out of school and everything, we always went to. In fact, when we were in Tampa, after I was married, if there was going to be something going on at the community hall for the school thing, we'd come from Tampa to see. It was just actually, even though I was away quite a bit of the time, this was home. And whenever we had a chance, back
Were you from Tampa? Your other home was in Tampa?
From Tampa. And we had a great time. But you see, home speech didn't come into being until around well, I think Jack started around 1950 or something like that. He may have bought the property beforehand. I know we moved in here in 1953, and we bought the property probably in 51 or 52. And there wasn't anything else here. I mean, we weren't the only ones in home speech, but I mean right on the street here. I think Mrs. Mann over there, Jack Holmes built that house. And I think Mrs. Mann and her husband were there. They came down in wintertime.
Well, was he the main builder then, Jack Holmes?
He was one of the main ones, yes.
And I know Mitch Davis.
Well, that was before Jack. I don't know how long I don't think Mitch kept on building. I'd have to ask Margaret about that. She'd know.
She's still doing all right?
Oh, yeah.
We interviewed her,
Did you?
A year or so ago. I know she has heart trouble.
I talked to her for quite a while the other day. She called. And we had quite a chat.
Are there any other people in that group that are still around?
Nothing.
That's why it's so important that we talk to you. And
Of course, now, Jerry Ponton was here, but they were only here, they used to come down in the wintertime from Michigan. And they were here in the early 30s. I was talking to her the other day, too. She was back.
well, in the early days, in the 20s and the early 30s, your main meeting place, other than the pier, would be the community house, which was where the Island Playhouse is now. Mm-hmm. And what kinds of things did you have there?
Oh, we had Halloween parties, and we had Valentine parties, and we had
Christmas.
just the thing. The kids skated in there,
Oh.
and we tried to fix up a tennis affair with a couple of chairs and a curtain for a net,
Uh,
you know. Then the men used it for a while. They fixed where the fireplace. Oh, I don't know where the fireplace is still there now.
It is,
Is it?
yeah.
Well, where the fireplace is, that wall was completely blank, and they had a handball court in there. Just the backboard, not the kind of handball that apparently they have now. I saw a handball the other day. Now I used to play handball, but I tell you, I wouldn't try that now because they have the walls, the side walls that they bounce off of.
oh, yeah. Racquetball.
Well, I don't know. Maybe they didn't use a racket, but then that same sort of thing.
Yeah.
But the men used it then for that, and on Sundays or any time, people would come they'd come with picnics and things from town. The men would come and fish all day. The women would come with their families, and then they would go up to community hall if it was rainy or something, and have their picnic inside.
Did you go to Rosa Church? That was about the first church.
When there was anything, when we first came, I guess it was Miss Coleman, had to be Mrs. Coleman, was having Sunday school there, and I went to Sunday school there, and then later on I was one of the teachers, so to speak, and I had two of the ornery little kids, the Hughes twins. They weren't mean or anything, but boy were they fast. They were about 3 years old or so, and they were, want to go one direction and want to go the other. I don't think I was cut out to be a teacher of any kind.
And they didn't have a permanent minister then, did
No, they had no minister at all. That was before Dr. Caldwell came. And then when he was here, I guess in the wintertime, he would hold services. And that really is when it really started to take off. The people got used to it, and the first thing you know, there were enough people going to church that then they could ask for a minister.
Which was the next church that came to the island?
But the Catholic Church, I think. I'm not really positive, but I think the Catholic Church was not St. Bernard's as it is now, but the older one.
Yeah,
The
it was
first
a
one.
wooden
Mhm. And then the Baptist Church. Now, Harvey Memorial down in Bradenton Beach, when it started, I don't know, but I think it's been going on for a long, long time. I mean, I think it was before. It was probably just a little after Rosa, though I really don't know. You see, we hadn't. There was just no easy way to get from here to Bradenton Beach. Because the sand-rutted road, that's all it was. When you went to town, you planned to spend the day. You took your shovel because you were going to get stuck at least once.
When did most of the people out here have cars?
From the first, there were cars here. They came over by
After the
boat.
bridge?
They came
even
over by
before
boat.
the bridge?
Oh yeah, they came by boat.
Okay.
Just like our mail was delivered by boat, the ice was delivered by boat. Everything came in by boat. They used to have a 2-wheel cart down there on the pier, and Mr. McDonald would come over and to get his ice for his little store, and he'd trundle that cart out to meet the boat and get his ice, and trundle it all the way back across the Our newspapers came that way, and then after that, I think the first iceman that came over the bridge, and they had a little better road, was Mr. Perry. He had a big high-wheeled truck that he used.
How about Uncle Sam?
Harry Dennis? Well, Harry, let's see. I think Harry started carrying the mail probably in the middle 20s. See, we didn't have a post office as such right away. So we had, what they did with the mail when they brought it in from on the boat, Margaret and I were talking about that. I said, do you know how we got our mail? She says, no, I never thought about it. But you know, when you're a little kid,
Yeah.
you don't think about things like that. So I really don't know who, whether they had mail call and called everybody's name or what. But anyway, they had, by the time they had the post office, and they had to have somebody to bring it from town. So I think Harry was the first one. And he also he also worked at the movie house too.
Movie house?
Yeah,
First
well,
time
he
I
was
heard
a
about
stage, like a stage manager. I mean, he did
Where
the
was
lights
that?
and things in Bradenton or Sarasota or
Oh.
wherever it was they
Oh,
were
I see.
having anything like that.
that. Oh, I thought you meant there was one out here.
Oh, goodness no. We did have a few times. We had movies. They tried to start it, having them in the community hall, but they really didn't take on. I don't know. As a child, I never missed the movies.
Well, it was more outdoor living,
Yeah.
wasn't it?
I didn't
Fishing.
even miss not having ice cream. It was really a treat when anybody had ice cream out here, because you couldn't depend on, you had no electricity, and trying to keep your gallon or 5 gallon cans of ice cream in just ice and salt and keep it hard enough, and sell it out before it all melted. Why, it wasn't too easy, and even to get it out here. We had,
So how far did you have to go in town that you could get a large grocery store?
well, you had to go from here to clear down to Bradenton Beach, where the old Cortez Bridge was, down to Bridge Street, across down Cortez Road to 14th, and then into town.
But where was town?
Where it
Just
is
where
now.
downtown
Downtown
is
Bradenton,
now?
no. Actually, you could go to Penn Cash, which was a store that was a little closer than, I don't know, it was not that much closer, a few blocks off of the main drag. That's where they kept the boa constrictor.
I
Let
remember
him
that.
loose.
It's where Cortez Plaza is now. They had some cages there with snakes in
No, that wasn't that far out.
Oh.
It was down closer to the railroad station. Not the one there by the Manatee River, but the.
Where was the other?
Oh, let's see. You know where there's a firehouse there on the street. Battles Hardware used to be on that street. What it was, 13th, 12th, 13th, something like that. But anyway, everybody knew that snake was loose at night.
Oh,
I guess it cut down on them worrying about somebody breaking in.
like a watchdog.
Mm-hmm.
Did many people have pets out here? Did people have dogs?
No,
cats?
there really weren't a lot of them. Several people had, I don't even remember people having dogs for a long time. I suppose they did, but I don't remember them. It just really isn't a very good place for dogs, to tell you the truth. Because no matter whether it's a good year for fleas or a bad year for fleas,
Yeah.
you're going to have fleas, and I don't care.
The heartworm, too.
And heartworm. It's very bad. And when the mosquitoes were so bad, it was just as well, I guess, people didn't have a lot of dogs, because there certainly wasn't any law against it or anything like that, and there were a few dogs out here, but not like there are.
Did these people that farm have horses?
No, not that I know of. Now, they probably did, but I really don't know, because the Cobbs were still had some plantings when we came. But you see, that was another thing, that was so far down. It wasn't someplace that you walked around to. It was just, you knew they were there, but you didn't.
Did you ever have storms when the tides rose so high? Sometimes we live up near the point, and sometimes the tide from the canal will rise so high. We've even had it come in our house. Do you ever remember anything like that?
Well, I'll tell you. I don't know exactly where you live, Carol, but there are places up there on the North Point that I wouldn't live because I can remember when it was water.
Oh, like on North Shore Drive?
Well, up beyond the lagoon. So we used to go around the point. Well, you went around the point. At low tide, you could go all the way around. We had to get out in the water maybe a little or get on the mangrove roots, but you could go around. At high tide, you couldn't get around the point. You had to go through the jungle, so we called it. There was a path there that you just cut off a part of that, the back of it away with past the marsh, and went through the jungle to get to the over to Redfish Point, which I believe you call Bean Point now.
Right, right, the point.
Yeah,
on
because
the
they
State
used to
Boulevard.
had, they used to go fishing. Families would go. We'd go up there fishing, and it was kind of an all-night affair.
Mhm.
Kids would go to sleep in the sand, and
How
men
about
and fish.
mosquitoes? Wouldn't that be bad?
Well, no, if at certain times, if the wind was right, the mosquitoes, and you always had a fire, and breathed in all that nice smoke.
Yeah.
So, no, it was that.
So what's the big difference of the early days and now?
Well, I wish it were more like the early days. Everything was. So I'm sure that the people here would be as helpful to one another as they were then, but you don't know anything about it. I mean, for instance, we never went to town. No one ever went to town without going around to all the neighbors and saying, "Do you need anything from town?" Well, you do that now, and they look at you like you were crazy. If I want anything from town, I'd go get it. But we always did
It was
that.
more a community
It was
spirit.
more of a very small community. Everybody knew you couldn't. I didn't like it for a few years there when I was a teenager. I got a little teed off at it because you couldn't do anything that somebody didn't see you and blow the whistle. But it was just more family. I mean, after all, you know, when you only have maybe 10 or 12 families, maybe a few more than that are year round. Well,
Just like one big family.
it's
only.
like one big family.
How about doctor? Do you have a
We had no
doctor?
doctor.
If there was an emergency, you just
No.
had to pack them up and take them into town.
And actually, I don't remember any emergencies.
How about when you had a baby? Anybody have babies?
Yeah, they did that. But they went new. Apparently there was never any rush now. Some of them had babies at home. They didn't go to the hospital, they had the baby at home.
Just with neighbors helping.
Mm-hmm.
Pioneers.
But it was, I don't know, no one ever, maybe the older people thought a great deal about it. But certainly as a child, I didn't think anything. It was a way of life and didn't mean anything special to me. And we just had a good time. Just a very relaxing. That was the way it was. And I mean, there wasn't any point in being in a big hurry because you weren't going to go anyplace anyway. You know, one side to the other. You didn't worry about, I suppose the streets were, well, I know some of the streets were named. Magnolia was named, and Spring was named, and Pine was named, Elm was named. And then Snapper, Gulf Drip was Snapper then. And that was
Snapper
it.
go all the way around the point?
Mm,
Oh, there wasn't any road up there.
there wasn't any road there. You get up where Elm was about, there was one house beyond Elm. Well, it was on Elm actually, but it was more toward the point. Where, well, it was where Mrs. Gordon, if you remembered her, and Frank Hardorn. Was she still here when you No?
Oh, yes, I know.
You know who I mean?
Frank was the woman, yeah.
Yeah. Where they lived was was the last house. Then Mrs. Luckenbill came in around the corner someplace. I don't know, up there. But that was it. And you did go on up to the point, but we walked on the beach. As far as I know, there wasn't even a road.
Hmm.
There might have been guess there was some sort of road, but it's washed out. In there where they're having so much trouble over the fence and the
Oh, no.
in the right of way. It went on from there, but it wasn't too much of a road. It was.
Here comes George.
Oh, is that who
I
it
gotta
is?
get gas for the car, so I'm
Oh.
going to stop on.
No.
Well, I guess we've had covered everything in the early days, and thanks for giving us all this information. Someday, if you find any pictures.
I might. I know there's some around here. I thought maybe I'd ask Jerry Ponton or if she had any pictures.
Because we're trying to, collect as many as we can we hope to expand our museum in the near future, so. That. This is November the 8th, 1993, and we're talking to Rhodora Welsch of Holmes Beach.
Okay.
You start with
Well,
me.
you just start. Well, I came in 1922 first, and we came over on a Sunday just as a place to visit from St. Pete when we were down here, and we liked it so well that while Mother couldn't come, she sent us and my brother and myself out here with a governess around the latter part of 22, and we had a great time. It was wonderful. We worked. I couldn't go to school because I was ill. My brother went to school to Lena Phelps, and one-room schoolhouse then with 7 or 8 students. That was all.
Was that where the community center is now?
The old school. And I had my lessons usually on the beach if the day was nice, up behind the sand dunes where the lagoon, up by the lagoon, which is of course no longer there.
North Point.
Yeah, and when low tide came, Maria and I would go wait for my brother to come home from school, and if the low tide was in the afternoon, then we went looking for coffee shells on the flats and rice shells, and we bring them home and the rainwater on them, and every day we go out and shake them up and pour the stinking water off of them, and we just had a great time. It was relaxing, and it did do me a lot of good. I certainly didn't expire like they expected me to, and it was nice then. It was like a family. There were not very many people that stayed year round in Anna Maria. We knew everybody as kids. We knew who lived in every house and all their business, and I'm sure they knew all ours. But we'd have oyster roasts on the beach. The men would go down, probably. I never did know exactly where they went, but they went south ways and got gunny sacks full of oysters. And some of the men would stay and dig a pin on the beach, and we'd all gather buttonwood, and they'd make a fire and have nice hot coals. And they used I suppose it was a piece of hardware cloth, a real stiff hardware cloth that they put over that they put the oysters on. And the women would fix a salad, maybe coleslaw usually. It was the standby. And catsup and the crackers, and we always had our ate out in the shelter under the shelter out from the old pavilion. That's where the sandbar is now, except the sandbar is as far back on the back of the lot as it can possibly get. Now the pavilion was in front of that, and then there was a little yard, not much of one, but some, and a sidewalk, and a road, and then the beach.
So there's been a lot of erosion.
Oh, miles almost. It's just been blocked of erosion because it was a very, very wide beach, even beyond, when you got beyond the sea oats and the usual beach growth of green stuff, whatever it was.
What happened to that pavilion?
It burned. About 1947, I guess, someplace. I'm not sure what year that was. It was someplace along in there. And then it became, I think the next person that got it was Pat Holmes and his brother-in-law. And they started the same. They started just a bar there. The pavilion, you had a picture in the Islander paper about the pavilion. That could not have been the pavilion because there was no screen porch on it. The pavilion wouldn't have been any sense in having it. People sitting out, you didn't sit out. And the mosquitoes were so bad, even in the daytime, you couldn't sit out. In wintertime, yes, but nobody did in the wintertime. But in the summertime, when it was used a lot, but there was a long screen porch in front of it, and then the dance floor off to the south, and south end of it, and it was screened on 3 sides with shutters to come down. Now that was run by Sam Davis and his wife and their daughter Ruth, and it was Ruth's job every Saturday to wax that blasted dance floor, on her hands and knees.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she had to do it by hand. There wasn't any electricity, and it wouldn't have done any good to have a polisher. And then they went along, and they incorporated. They decided they would, and that was quite a hassle. And then we had, let's see, what would it be? Where the old city offices were. Now, was that the corner of
On Pine?
On Pine? Was that the corner of
Crescent.
Crescent? Okay.
That's where our museum is. That's where the museum is.
Oh, well, yeah, that's true. Okay, that was a garage when we came, and the men gathered there, and they looked at each other's cars. There weren't too many cars out here, and it was a hangout, I guess. Then they put in an electric plant. They had either an old truck or a tractor jacked up in the back with a belt on it that ran to a generator. I don't know too much about that sort of thing, except I checked with my brother, and he said yes, they did. And there were the people that had electricity were those. They had a few poles, electric poles. That's all they put in, and because it's just that one generator, it wouldn't handle too many people. And we had electric lights from about 9 o'clock in the morning, or 7 or 8 o'clock, and whenever it got.
You mean that
daylight.
was all the electricity on the island?
Yeah.
Oh.
There wasn't anything else. And of course it didn't go very far, just a few houses, so they didn't have it all over Anamaria. And we had, then after that I asked my brother what happened after, how we happened to get it quit.
Now where were you living at this time?
At that time, I was living on the corner of Pine and Snapper, or Gulf Drive. See, my family had come down, and we bought a house then. We bought that house. And we had, after they got, I guess Florida Power and Light must have taken over, because we did.
Was that in the 50s or late 40s?
Oh, no, this was in the 1920s.
Oh, you're still talking about the
Yeah,
20s.
the electricity, yeah. in Florida Power and Light, I guess is what took it over, or the county, or whatever was, I don't know whether it was Florida Power and Light then, but someone in town took it over so that we had electricity all day long and all night. See, here they would cut it off. You'd only have it for a few hours.
Yeah.
And if you want to do any ironing, you better get up and get at it. So, and then they
What'd you do about refrigeration?
we had Mr. Perry in the ice truck. Before that, it came in by boat. When we first came here, it came by boat, but right away they started coming over the bridge.
Now, I heard that where you're saying the city offices are, I heard that was once an ice house.
It was after the electric plant, and they went to ice.
Oh.
Now, that didn't last long either. That ice wasn't even cold.
Oh.
It was made out of sulfur water. Now, if you've
Oh.
had ever seen ice made out of sulfur water, it's white, and it really is kind of grainy.
Smelly.
Oh, smell it. And it isn't even, as I said, it didn't even seem cold. It didn't chip like regular ice. It just sort of squeaked. And then we had, let's see, then at one time there, and I'm not too sure which came first, but after they gave up the ice plant, and the post office was in there, in one side. I think before, I don't know, I think before Janie Whitehead had the post office across the street, she was postmistress, but I don't know exactly which was first. It could be she had it across the street first, and then they moved it over to the other, because I know they had boxes in the one where the old city hall used to be. And she didn't have them in the little house.
Mhm.
There were no boxes there that I remember. And then let me see, we just had a good time.
Now,
There wasn't
do you know
anything
anything about Holmes Beach or Brandon Beach at this time?
I know very
Victoria?
little about Braden Beach. Holmes Beach wasn't here.
Oh.
The land was here. And right about this street here on 81st Street, or maybe 79th, there was at the end of the street and clear out across the mangroves. You drove down here a ways, and then you got out of the car or truck or whatever you happened to be in, fighting mosquitoes, and you walked on a boardwalk, sort of a pier-like affair, low. I mean, it didn't have to be high, for a long way out to an observation tower. Now, it had been I guess, something that they had used in surveying. I don't know. So far as I know, that's
Down this way? Out to
yeah,
the
it was
main
right
road?
straight out
Oh.
there.
To the bay?
And we used to go out there on Sundays after that. I think McGee probably
Joe McGee.
put that up. I really don't know who put it up. It could have been someone else. I don't know.
Well, about 1921, isn't that when they built the Cortez Bridge, the wooden bridge?
Yeah. Yes, they built that, and then, let's see, it opened what? And it didn't open, I don't believe, until 22.
Oh.
Because, see, the 21 storm tore it up.
What about that storm?
It wasn't here.
Oh.
I missed that one.
Oh.
I hit
So,
all the others.
With the building of that bridge, did the island change? I mean, were people coming here more than after the bridge was up?
Oh yes, because before our main pastime was we went fishing. Every Thursday and every Sunday we went down to see the boat come in, and then in the afternoon we went down to see it go out.
The excursion boat at the
Excursion
city
boat.
pier?
Well, they not only were excursion boat, but they carried produce and other stuff. You know, anything that
They came twice a week then?
came twice a week then. It had been coming. Boats have been stopping here for a long time to pick up produce, because this was around the same Cobb's place. There was quite a bit of farming. I mean, they had a kind of a truck farm, and Mr. Bonham, who lived on the bay not back there on Spring Street,
Where did he live?
but he lived on the bay, and he had a coconut grove. And as I understand it, he wasn't doing it when I was here, but I understand that he used to ship coconuts too. But we had, it was fun going down and seeing the people get off the boat, and they'd walk across the island to the beach, and then at 4 o'clock by the boat would leave again and go back to St. Pete and Tampa.
Now, wasn't there a hotel or something right up on Snapper at that
was
time?
Anglers. There was one on, on where?
Snapper.
Yeah, yes. It was right across, you know where what is it, the Wild Monkey or whatever that thing is, that purple building?
Yeah.
And then on to Spring Street, that corner. That's where that hotel was, right across from the post office. And
Then there was another one on.
then there was one down on the, right at the foot of the bridge, the
Bay Boulevard.
pier. And that one was called Anglers Inn. This one up here on Snapper or Gulf Drive was called Anna Maria Hotel. And then later on in the late 30s, I would say, 36, 37, something like that, the Kiplingers opened the Anna Maria Inn, I think it was called. And that was at the house that Robesons used to live in. Now, not the one they built, but the one there on, what would it be, Palmetto?
Yeah, I think it is. Where Mullins live?
I don't know who lives there. I have no idea who lives in there now.
On near the Gulf.
Well,
Gulf
you know
side.
where Corey Chambers' house was. The Coquina house there.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Right, the street behind, right beside the
Yeah, I
north
think
side of that. I think that's Palmetto
Okay.
behind.
So what was that called? An inn?
Anna Maria Inn.
Anna Maria?
They served meals. She was a wonderful cook, and they served meals, but only on reservation. You had to tell them, it was
They
one
took
of those.
overnight people?
They had a couple of rooms, and that's all. It was not what you would call a money maker. It wasn't even a howling success. It was just too much work. That's where I met Mr. Lippman, Walter Lippman. He brought up a group of people there were about 12 altogether in their party. They came for stone crabs. And the woman had been waitress for Mrs. Kiplinger, got sick, so she came up and asked me if I would wait table. Now, I had never done anything like that in my life, and I wasn't the best in the world. But it impressed me so because Mr. Lippman, I discovered, never carried any money, ever. His wife was alone, and she paid everything. It was quite an experience. My first and last, because I'm not the best waitress in the world. Oh, well, let's see.
Now, the school, you say, was on Magnolia, and they only had a few children at that time.
Who?
The school.
Oh, the school,
Was
yeah.
on Magnolia. And then, didn't they meet across the street there too, at that house?
No, that was Mrs. Coleman's house.
I mean, the one on the corner, on Crescent and.
No. No, they just met. They just had the school there. It was, part of the time it was one room and part of the time it was 2 rooms. Now, when I first started, there were 7 students in there. They had to have 7 to start. Well, one year they didn't have 7, so they got Janet Smith, who was 5, to come to school till someone came down to make up the 7.
That was calling it close, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
And was Lena the
Lena
teacher?
was teacher. I believe her sister at one time too. It was after I left, but I believe that Myrtle Rogers also taught there for 1 year, before Miss Bell or Lillian Davis or whatever it was that came. Then we had another teacher. I've forgotten what her name was. I can see her. I swear to God, she wore the same dress from the day she arrived until the day she left, and it was black and sort of a brown, it was, well, you might say tarnished. It was getting kind of a brownish black. She wasn't our favorite.
How about the music teacher?
Oh, Miss Kathleen?
Yeah.
Oh, she was wonderful.
Now, was she at that school?
She was not really. I don't know what her status was later on. When she first started, she just did it because she liked it. She thought all children should have music. So at first she would have children. I know several of us went down to her house every Saturday, and she gave us a little, what was actually a music appreciation affair. It was so
Where'd she
big.
live?
She was a Jones. She lived at Captain Jones' place.
Was Jones was her father?
Mm-hmm. John Jones. You know where that is.
Yeah.
It was where Sportsman's Harbor is now. And the
Oh,
Catholic Church,
okay.
all that
Oh,
stuff.
the
back-
Catholic church.
All
So
that.
that was home speech.
All yes, but you see, it wasn't home speech then.
Oh,
It was just, it was a homestead, like the Sanus homestead and the Jones homestead, and the Bean homestead, and so that it was just a part of the island that they had come to. I mean, Captain Jones could get his boat in. There was a cove there, and he had his brother from Tampa, Francis Jones, who I believe was a lawyer, had a piece of property adjoining. He didn't have as much. I guess what he had really was part of the homestead. I mean, you know, they built a house there. Like,
yeah.
well, if you're going to build out here, why, that's okay, go ahead. And then you came back north to Cobb's. And
Raymond.
and who?
Raymond.
Well, their house, that Raymond's lived there, but they lived in a houseboat to the east of Cobb's, right there in the water, right, a little bit south of where Lewis Cobb had his marina. The houseboat was tied up there.
Was his wife Anna?
No, that wasn't. His wife was Mimi. You mean the Raymonds?
Cobb.
Oh, Cobb. Boy.
Sam Cobb or Lewis Cobb?
Well, Lewis Cobb was a son. And his wife, it was,
So who was his father, Sam?
Sam.
And he was a boat builder?
He was a boat builder. Lewis was a boat builder.
And somebody drove the school bus?
She did. Elva was her name. That was
Yeah.
Elva Cobb drove the school bus. Years later, because they couldn't have gone into school even though we had the bridge. The way the road was, there wasn't any real road. It was just two ruts going down the island.
How about mosquitoes?
Oh. Mosquitoes, in the summertime, if you went out at night, you kept your mouth shut.
Huh.
Choked to death. But the thing we did at night in those early years, every night everyone would gather at the pier. It was like a family thing. That's what always.
Meeting place.
It was a meeting place. Families of children and the men would fish if they wanted to. The women would gossip. And but they'd go down, see them going down the street with a tea towel or diaper or whatever they had, flipping it over their shoulders to keep the mosquitoes out. And we always walked in the middle of the road because it was shell and it was white, though we had sidewalk. But you didn't know when the alligator was going to come across the road or something.
Where'd the
like
alligator live?
that. There must have been more than one. You never saw more than I know where one lived because the Kiplingers lived in the lakeside. Now let's see. Did you know the Patskys? Where the Patskys
On
lived?
Pine.
On Pine, All right, that was the lakeside. And they had a little dock out there into the lake. And they'd go out and they'd stamp their feet on the thing and call alley, 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 and here'd come the alligator across, and they'd, Mr. Kiplinger would
Was
take.
it big?
Yeah, it was pretty big. And then there was the lake then to the west of it. There was another.
That's where the canal is now. The canal
I
that comes
don't-
up
to-
in back of Rosa Church.
Yeah, I guess that's, or they call it Lake La Vista or something, whatever. There wasn't a canal then.
Oh.
See, it was just, the lake was there, and then to the east, to the west of that, there was another lake, had no name.
Did that alligator ever hurt anybody?
No, they killed that one because it treed.
Phelps.
Treed Phelps. Yeah.
Yeah.
Clyde got treed
Clyde.
one Sunday afternoon, and the reason I said there must have been more than one because that was a female and she was laying eggs, so it was just. It's a little hard to.
Did he stay up in the tree all day? Or
Till he kept yelling. Lena was lying down, I guess, resting, and Clyde kept screaming bloody murder, and finally heard him, and the men went with their guns and shot the alligator. Had a terrible time killing it.
Were there other animals out here? Of course, there were raccoons, but I mean, there's been talk, Don Moore, for about a month, wrote in the Islander about the Black Panther that Jess Ingram saw or killed.
They said there was a panther there. Not too sure about that one because there might have been.
How about snakes?
Oh, we had rattlesnakes. We had rattlesnakes, black snakes, coach whips. You very seldom saw them. You'd see black snakes frequently, but rattlesnakes you didn't too often see until they would fire the weeds. So we didn't have any there between the back of the players, which is now, or it used to be the community hall, clear on down to that end of that block. See, there was nothing in there except just high grass and stuff, and they would wait for a nice calm day and they would fire it, and the men would get on the other side of from where the fire was going toward with their shovels and their whatever it took and hose, and it would get the rattlesnakes would come out and kill them.
Anybody ever get bitten?
No. As I say, you really didn't see it. And when I think of the times that we played in the saw palmetto, you know what that is? That low palmetto that's has a sawtooth down the side of it, grows flat sort of. Out behind the school, and we used to play hide and seek out there. Now that is where the snakes like to be, but we never saw one. Never saw any at all. And we used to make houses in the tall grass down by Snowston where we lived when I was real little, when we first came. Never saw a snake, and why we didn't get bitten, I'll never know.
I lived next to Marion Coleman when I first came to the island, and my children were just little, and one day they came in the house and said, come out and see, you know. And she had killed a 6-foot rattlesnake and nailed it to the tree.
Huh.
I was so afraid.
Well, now you say you lived there by Marion Coleman. Which way from Marion?
Towards the Gulf, the house, right on Crescent and Magnolia.
Oh, yeah. I know which one you mean. That I think Ellen and Jack Marshall lived in there once. In fact, I think they bought that place and fixed it up.
I think they had the one next to
up,
it.
back to it.
Crescent. Yeah. This one was owned by that judge in town. I can't remember his name. He sort of retired in disgrace. But it was just a rental. And see, I came down by myself, and George stayed up north to sell a house. I had 3 children, and I was like 8 months pregnant. So we settled in, and her mother was still living at the time. And I think I enjoyed her mother better than Marion. Marion never talked that much.
No, Marion was never allowed to talk that much.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah, she was pretty well subdued.
Yeah. Well, her mother, I guess she was in her 90s then.
Yeah.
This was 1956. And, but she was very interesting.
Well, she was. She was a real worker in trying to get the church started out here in Sunday school. And she really did a magnificent job. She unfortunately didn't live to see the way it finally turned out. But goodness knows she was very persistent and gave her time and everything to trying to get a Sunday school, at least a Sunday school for the children.
Now, was she related to George Bean?
Yes.
What, Lulu Coleman was,
Hmm?
Lulu was Marion's mother. How was she related to George Bean?
I really don't know. I don't know whether she was a sister or what. I really never particularly, in those years, we really didn't make much over who was who or anything about it.
Well, in the Historical Society, we start everything with George Bean, you know.
Yeah.
And then we should almost have a family tree showing
Mhm.
who was related to him and how.
I really don't know how she was related, but it's, I think, a sister, but as I say, I'm just not sure.
Of course, Lulu was a commissioner, too, so she was sort of a
At one
foreign
time,
woman,
when we had our female
female commissioner.
commission and
Do you
mayor
remember
and
how
everything.
that went?
It was fine. They did a real good job.
Of course, they didn't have as many people and
Oh
problems to
no,
deal with
no,
as they did
oh
now.
no, goodness.
Who was the mayor?
Frances Wardy,
And she was the
postmistress too, postmaster.
Yeah, they called it master.
They called it postmaster in those days. They didn't really worry about whether it was.
And where did she live?
She lived right there at the post office. See, she had a grocery store to start with.
Right on Snapper and
In Spring. She had a grocery store to start with. That's where Mr. McDonald had it first. He had sort of a kiosk affair. It was, the kind that you pulled the shutters up and there was the counter and the little shelves behind. It was just a very small building, and he lived up on the point. But then several people came in after that,